All right, well, with that, we're going to go ahead to our discussion items. And I see that we have the Lone Pine plat up first. And that usually just takes a few minutes. So, hi, good morning, Jill. Are you going to lead us through that?
Either Brad or I can just read the brief memo and maybe Brad wants to add to it.
There's Brad.
Does that work?
Yeah, good morning, Brad.
So
Morning.
I'll start off and Brad, you can jump in if you want. Good morning,
Sure.
Chair and Commissioners. Jill Amory, your Assessor and Tax Collector for Wasco County. We have another subdivision in the Lone Pine Planned Unit Development down on the river by the Dallas Bridge. This boundary of Phase D was platted as tracks E and F of Phase C of the plat, and this phase creates 16 new lots. And if you're looking at the plat, it's lots 73 through 88. I've left, there's about 4 pages to it. It's a pretty extensive one. I've left it on my desk for the commissioners to roll through and sign that when you're ready. Just buzz by our office and sign, and then we'll take care of getting it over to be recorded.
Great. Anything you want to add, Brad?
No, not really, except, this is the last phase down there. They fully platted that area out now, so we won't be seeing any more Lone Pine subdivisions. It's great property down there. Pretty rare to have waterfront residential properties with full utilities. It's a great asset to our community, I think.
Yeah, I would agree. So this is just really a formality, and we need to go down and sign that?
Correct.
Okay. All right. Anything else we need to consider?
I don't think so.
All right. Any questions, commissioners, or comments?
I didn't have any questions. I'm happy to see this plat, this development area just continue right along. It doesn't seem like it was that many months ago when we approved the last segment of it. So this is great. Where is the plat in your office, Jill?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah, looking forward to signing that plat today. So thank you.
Yeah, if you drive down there, there's a lot of construction going on. It's quite interesting. So yeah, so all right, we'll come down and sign it with that special pen. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay. All right. I see that Shelley's joined us. Shelley, are you going to be giving us the COVID report? I don't see Dr. McDonald yet.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Shelley Campbell from North Central Public Health. It was not my intention to give it today. I was jumping on to hear Dr. McDonald's report, but if she is not able to join us, I can give a brief update on what I know. Would you like me just to go ahead and do that, or I can reach out to her as well?
Yeah, I think Kathy, she did confirm that she was going to be here today, right?
Yeah, I had an email from her saying that she thought it was important. So she may have gotten tied up with something else this morning.
Let me reach out to her real quick and then I'll email you or text you back.
Okay.
We can do a discussion list item.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, thank you. Okay, well, why don't we move on to our MCED IGA amendment? So who is going to lead us through that one? Looks like Kathy. Or Tyler. Are you talking, Kathy? If you are, you're muted.
Thank you. Tyler can speak to this. I can get started on it. So if you recall, when the last year's annual MCED IGA was approved, it had a $25,000 additional funding for other projects. And Tyler had asked that, we really outline what that money was going to be for, not just hand it over. And so he and Carrie have been working on that, and they have developed a scope of work basically that outlines what those funds will be used for. And this amendment to the IGA just formalizes that. Did I miss anything, Tyler? You must be otherwise engaged.
Okay. All right. How about commissioners? Do you have any questions or I'm trying to find exactly what that work is. I can't, I know I read it the other day, but I can't really recall. But it is outlined in the agreement, as I recall.
Yeah, it
Yes.
is. It's, go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, Chair Schwartz, I think that this amendment is right in line. It gives us flexibility within the scope. And I think that given our past history with our partner, that this is something that I'm totally support. So thank you.
Mhm.
The couple items that were added as additions were to update the comprehensive or update our EDC strategic action plan, help us with some broadband with Q Life,
Oh, yeah, that's right.
grant writing for the county for Kramer Fields, and then an entrepreneurship program.
Great,
in
thank
the
you.
county.
Yeah, I think there's no doubt that they are an excellent partner. And if we didn't know that before, we sure knew it during COVID. And
Carrie has joined us.
Oh, hi, Carrie. We're a little bit ahead of schedule. So we were just discussing the MCED IGA amendment. Is there anything you'd like to talk to us about?
No, I think Kathy covered it pretty well. I think it's just trying to reflect that conversation around a little bit more specificity for that additional resource. And worked on it with Tyler to come to an agreement on what we thought would make most sense for that. So appreciate your consideration.
Yeah, I hope you heard all of our accolades for the work that you're doing. So prior to popping in, so.
I did, thank you.
Okay, all right. Tyler, are you with us now?
Yes, I am here. Sorry, I heard my name in the background and was dealing with something else.
Oh, okay. We had to skip ahead to the MCED IGA agreement. And so I don't know if you have anything to add. We're pretty confident. We know what it's about. We know what the amendment's about, and we're really good with the work that MCED does.
Yep, I really appreciate the partnership we've got with MCED right now. They're doing a lot of work for us on a lot of different projects. So thank you.
Okay. With that, I'll entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, I'll move to approve the amendment 1 to the 2021-2022 MCED Wasco County Intergovernmental Agreement.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, there's a motion to approve and a second. Is there any further discussion, commissioners?
Just wanted to make one note that the fairgrounds are included in potential scope of work as well. Thank you.
That's great. Okay, I'll call for the vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And chair votes aye. Thank you. All right. Anybody heard from Shelley yet? No, I haven't either. Okay, then we will move right along.
I'm back, Kathy.
Oh, great. Hi, Shelley.
Hi. So I can give a very brief update. Mimi, we had a communication glitch and she had another commitment. So if that's okay, I will speak to what we're doing here in public health. So as many of you probably know, with the new variant that we have been dealing with, we've had more cases reported probably in the month of January than certainly from the pandemic last year and through previous months. I believe we had close to 1,000 cases reported. And one of the interesting things that's happening right now is that we have so many home tests and different places doing tests that are not being reported, that it kind of skews the numbers that we know of people who are testing positive. So we are continuing to work on that. We've changed some of the data that we release to the public because we get questioned a lot about this doesn't seem right. And it's not right in the sense of we're reporting or OHA is reporting what is being reported to us. So just a clarification, when people see those numbers and they seem a little not correct, again, we're reporting what's reported to us. The other thing that's happening, we are still doing testing here daily, and other places are doing testing. One Community Health is picking up a lot of testing. We did some testing out in Dufur last week because they were having an outbreak in the schools, and OHA did testing out there. And then we are also looking forward to the FEMA bus that is coming to the Dalles specifically, starting February 21st. We're still nailing down a location for that. We're trying to get it to be somewhere very visible in the downtown area or on drive-through areas of town. So more information to come with that. They will be here a full week and having all walk-in vaccinations, and they will be doing all the vaccines from ages 5 and up. So anyone in that group can, and any one of the vaccines can get vaccinated or boosted. And it will be, I believe they're going to be doing vaccines from 11 to 6 every day. So they are fully contained with pharmacy, with security, with nurses, with pharmacists, with parking, everything. They bring everything self-contained. So we have a vaccine clinic tomorrow up at the Readiness Center for NCPHD. We will not be having one next week. That was tentatively scheduled due to the fact we really want to make sure that we have people go into the FEMA trailer since they're bringing so many resources here to support the vaccination efforts. The other thing that's happening is we are receiving approximately 5,000 test kits for in what we call in-home test kits, where people can pick them up and do their own testing. There's been a little glitch in the OHA delivery system. Evidently, they sent them out and then they thought no one was home, so they went back to OHA. So it's been a big lift for them to get these millions of tests out, let's just say. So we are looking for those to come, we hope today or tomorrow, and we have a plan to distribute them, not only from NCPHD, but from many of our community partners, and also many community partners, the local nonprofits have opportunities to get them, as well as other pharmacies and other clinics and things. So there's a wide net that's being spread for people to be able to get those tests. And as soon as we receive them, we will be putting out a lot of communications to the public on how to pick those tests up. So that's a very brief overview of what's happening this week in public health. There's certainly a lot of other things, but that is our COVID update. So I'm happy to take questions. And if I don't have the answer, I'm happy to find it out for you.
Great. Let's go ahead and entertain questions from our county commissioners. Go. Because you know I have a few. But go first, Scott. Go ahead. You look like you have something.
I actually had a question I wanted to ask Mimi, but I'm happy to ask you. It's not a question that you can really answer, but I wanted to ask it anyway. The question was, when do you think we're going to be able to be back together? Kind of related to these meetings and all these virtual meetings. I'm getting pretty tired of doing everything virtually. So I was just curious. I was going to ask her, when does she think, we might be through this so we can start having in-person meetings again?
Yeah, well, I think I can give a little brief highlight to that. So again, we follow not only the CDC, but the OHA modeling on when we see those numbers starting to go down. And if you've seen the latest report on that, there is a little downhill movement. So we're very hopeful about that. Again, I think from this last all get together, the holiday weekend, we typically see an increase from that. And then about 4 to 6 weeks later, we see, I think, the increase in the hospitalization. So we really look at that hospitalization number. And once those numbers start to decrease, then we can model from that. I believe the latest from OHA's modeling has been sometime, they hope, at the end of March is what we'll see as the pandemic really narrowing down. What that means for when we can get back to in-person, I don't think any of us have an answer for that right now. Sorry, I wish I had a more hopeful, optimistic Dr. McDonald answer, but that's what we know today.
No, that's great. Thanks, Shelley. I didn't think we'd have a specific answer for sure. That was all I had.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair Schwartz. Thank you, Director Campbell. Maybe you could go over the current guidelines for us as I know things haven't changed a lot, but I've seen recently folks are being a little bit lackadaisical. Maybe an update, reinforcement of the protocols and guidelines might be beneficial to our community. Thank you.
Sure. When you speak of guidelines, are you talking about isolation, quarantine, mask wearing, testing, just a general overview?
Yeah, let's do the basics, the mask wearing, the distancing, and the simple pieces that we can all do to keep each of us safe. So thank you.
Happy to do that. So in that aspect, the guidelines have not really changed. The messaging is still to, one, practice social distancing. If you're sick, stay home. If you're not feeling well or any symptomatics, to be tested. Of course, get vaccinated, get your booster that we know is a proven help for getting, keeping the vaccine, or not the vaccine, keeping the disease away. So we really always encourage that. The mask mandate for indoor mask wearing is still in effect. We know that mask wearing mitigates the transmission of the disease. So we fully ask and support and advocate for people to continue to wear their mask. Of course, if they're in a large setting or around anyone who is not feeling well or unknown individuals, to continue to wear your mask and to wear the new guidance is around the masking is to wear the KN95 or the N95 or the medical mask. Again, cloth masks are not the best, but they certainly are the best in substitution for not wearing one at all. So again, those are the brief overview guidelines that really have changed a little bit. The main guidelines too is if you're tested around isolation quarantine is around the 5-day kind of rule of be safe, stay home if you're 5 days, and especially if you're symptomatic, and then wear the mask, continue to wear the mask around everyone at the minimum for 5 days afterwards.
Thank you, Director Campbell. Very helpful. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Great question, Steve. Good reminder for all of us. Shelley, could you just repeat for everyone's benefit when the FEMA trailer is coming, where it's going to be, and the time that it will be open? Could you do that? And for the record again, thank you.
So the FEMA trailer, they have what's called their travel day here on February 20th. They will be open for business on February 21st, which is a holiday. So actually a great day to get vaccinated if people are off. We don't have the confirmed location yet. That's to come. We're working on that. But when they do find the location, it will be from 11 to 6 every day and through the 28th.
Excellent, thank you. And the confirmed location, maybe we'll hear about that on the 16th, and you'll have it out in social media and press releases and everything.
Absolutely, we're hoping to secure that today or tomorrow. We're in the top.
Great, we're lucky to have that, and I hope it boosts our booster numbers.
Yeah.
That'd be great. Yeah, yeah. I think one change that I've seen is kind of a counting of numbers by the week. That NCPHD has put out, which was interesting to see that for last week was close to 500 for a week tally. And so, you know, certainly the way that I see the numbers, they're not going down here yet. And I know that Oregon, as a state, we're seeing some plateauing and some decreasing, but that's not necessarily true in the rural areas. And it doesn't look like it's necessarily true here yet either. So, but we'll get there. We will get there. I will be Dr. McDonald optimistic. So,
Thank you for that.
And speaking of Dr. McDonald, I wish she was here because I really want to offer a hearty congratulations to her for being named the Dalles Chamber Woman of the Year. So if you could pass that along to her from the board, that would be great. She certainly deserves it. She has been the soldier in the front lines for the last 2 years. And so, man, oh man, does she deserve it. And I'm so proud of the community for honoring her. Yeah.
I'm happy to do that. And yes, we're very, it really brought a lot of sunshine to the staff here that she was honored and well-deserved. We agree.
Yeah, that's awesome. Just one other thing. I think the OHA guidelines, and they do change, but there is a website that you can go to for OHA that has the current guidelines, right, Shelley? So if you're home and you test positive, you can go to that site and get the latest up to date. What do I need to do? So Shelley, if you could put that in the chat when you get a minute for folks, that would be really helpful, because I think that's what people really need to know, because it's hard to track, you know, week by week, the changes.
No, that's a good point. Thank you for that, Commissioner Schwartz. There's also a what they call a hotline. So I'll put that in the chat too, where you can call and speak to a health professional that's trained in all giving out correct information around quarantine and isolation and testing.
Great. So at this time, if the commissioners don't have any further questions or comments, I will open it up to our audience. This is your opportunity to grill Shelley. And if she doesn't know the answer, she'll get back to you. So please unmute yourself or raise your hand, or and jump in if you want to ask a question. You guys are just so quiet this morning.
They just want to hear from Dr. McDonald, and I don't know.
You know, I think you did an excellent job, actually, Shelley. So I know you're in the thick of it, right alongside Dr. McDonald, day in and day out. So, okay, well, going, gone. So if you could get those things in the chat, and thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today, Shelley. We so appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Have a wonderful day if you can. All right. All right. Well, it looks like next we have Debbie Jones. Why don't you talk to us about the Mid-Columbia Center for Living Gambling Prevention Subcontract? Thanks for joining us.
Yes, this is the grant contract I spoke to you about last time, and this is the official agreement that we need to have approved to be able to move forward. So just this was a program that or an effort that was formally, specifically, it still is contracted with Mid-Columbia Center for Living, and they have reached out for us to take on the prevention end of this gambling contract. And we're eager to do that. And this is the official agreement between Center for Living and Wasco County to be able to start moving forward with that.
All right, commissioners, grill Debbie.
I can just so there is if you've looked over at a piece in there that mentions working with Sherman County, and those dollars, we will support that new hire and really assist that individual in helping them. Some of that funds will be to help mentor, as well as to help them move forward with getting their prevention certification. And that Molly and gosh, I went blank. Her cohort, Amber DeGrange at Sherman, have agreed upon that. So this allows that to happen also, for a smooth transition to assist Sherman County with their prevention efforts.
Okay.
So Debbie, are there any new staff being hired to perform this work?
No, it's not a very big amount. No, there would not be a need specifically for this work. It actually allows us to maybe have a little bit more bandwidth with what we are already doing to help pay maybe for some advertisements, different messaging. So addiction is addiction, and prevention as far as risky behaviors, this falls in line with a lot of things we do. There is some staff time required for us, for myself and the Sherman person, to make sure that we are up to speed on the specifics with gambling prevention. That makes it a little bit different, and that's already all been outlined, and a lot of that we can do online, so there's not additional travel costs, but not a need, definitely not a need. We've been kind of trying to do this work, and now actually we're going to get supported, so we appreciate Center for Living seeing that partnership.
Thanks.
Commissioner Kramer, did you have something you wanted to add?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Ms. Jones. No, this is a small step in the bigger picture, and I wholeheartedly support this effort. Thank you.
Thank you.
Deb, is this, you'll be working with adults and youth, is that right?
Ours is, yes, a little bit, and it's more because Center for Living still has the gambling treatment dollars, and that's completely different. This is more raising awareness, and definitely our messages will probably be tied more into school, but we definitely could see doing some kind of retail assessments, and any place that they sell lottery tickets, that we have some signage there as far as how they can get help. So more of a messaging, but no direct service.
Oh, great. That's helpful. Thank you. Okay. All right.
I would move to approve the professional services contract between Mid-Columbia Center for Living in Wasco County through its Youth Think program for gambling prevention services.
Thank you, Commissioner Hagee, and I will second your motion.
Okay, there's been a motion to approve and a second. Any further discussion, commissioners? Okay, hearing none. All in favor, please say aye.
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 And chair votes aye. Thank you, Debbie.
Thank you, and I'll see you in 2 weeks with another one.
You are a busy lady. That's all I have to say, man. All right, great. Thank you. Okay, I think we have just a couple minutes, so why don't we move to our consent agenda? Does that work, commissioners? Looks like we have our regular session minutes of January 19th.
Madam Chair, move approval as presented.
I'll second.
All right, any further discussion, corrections, additions? Okay, hearing none. All in favor, please say aye.
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 And chair votes aye. Thank you. All right. Well, at this time, I am going to open the hearing. We do have a Planning Commission appeal hearing. And again, I have to read a rather lengthy script, so please bear with me. Don't go to sleep. And I'm going to go ahead and start that. And I welcome folks that are here for this particular hearing. So with that, we will now reopen the Board of Commissioners quasi-judicial appeal hearing on agenda item 921-199-000-193-PLNG, a National Scenic Area request decided upon by the Planning Commission for the following: a new dwelling and structures to support the proposed farm use of raising approximately 13 goats. Specifically, this request includes 1, a new single-family dwelling, 1,889 square footprint, 50 feet long by 40 feet wide by 24 feet high. Accessory buildings, 1,500 square footprint, 50 foot long by 40 foot wide by 24 foot height. Agricultural structures, approximately 5,000 feet of 4 foot high wire mesh fence, 6 foot fence post enclosing 3 areas on either side of the driveway for livestock pens, approximately 900 foot of movable electric fence to protect a wetland, and 50-foot diameter movable round pen. And 4, retroactive review of an unlawfully placed well to serve the residential use and a new 12-foot long by 12-foot wide by 12-foot high well house with 1,000-gallon water cistern and driveway. The property involved is described as map and tax lot, Township 2 North, Range 11 East, Section 11, Tax Lot 2200. The tax account identification number 327. The criteria for approval of a land use decision includes the following chapters within the National Scenic Area Land Use and Development Ordinance for Wasco County, the NSA-LUDO. Chapter 2, Development Approval Procedures, Section 2.050.c.1, Appeals of a Planning Commission Decision, Section 2.170, Review by the County Governing Body, Chapter 3 Basic Provisions, Section 3.130, a 2-inch small scale agricultural zone, GMA only. Chapter 4 Supplemental Provisions, Section 4.040, off-street parking, Chapter 11 Fire Safety Standards, and Chapter 14 Scenic Area Review. The proposed development must comply with applicable provisions contained in the management plan for the Columbia River Gorge National Scenic Area. Generally, unless otherwise noted, if a request is found to be consistent with the NSA-LUDO, it is considered consistent with the management plan. This will be a de novo hearing conducted as a new hearing before the public. New evidence or testimony will be accepted to fully and fairly address significant procedural or substantive issues raised. The procedure I will follow is disclosure of interest, ex parte contact or potential conflicts, reading of the rules of evidence. Planning department staff will present their report. The appellant will then have the opportunity to testify. The applicant will have an opportunity for rebuttal. Those who wish to speak in opposition of the proposal, those who wish to speak in favor of the proposal, questions by commissioners of staff, proponent or opponent, and then we will close the hearing, record, and begin deliberation. The deliberation is only commissioners and staff if questions. If questioned. Okay, so disclosure of interest, ex parte contact or potential conflicts. Does any commissioner wish to disqualify themselves for any personal or financial interest in this matter?
No.
No.
And chair is no as well. Does any commissioner wish to, excuse me, I think I need a drink of water here. Okay. Does any commissioner wish to report any significant ex parte or pre-hearing contacts?
Nope.
No.
And chair is no as well. Thank you. And commissioner, let's see, for the record, have any commissioners conducted a site visit to the subject property?
Not in person.
No.
And neither have I. Thank you. Okay. Let's see. I think we'll then go down to the rules of evidence are as follows. No person shall present irrelevant, immaterial, or unduly repetitious testimony or evidence. Evidence received shall be of a quality that reasonable persons rely upon in the conduct of their daily affairs. Testimony and evidence must be directed toward the criteria applicable to the subject hearing or to criteria that the party believes apply to the decision. Failure to raise an issue with sufficient specificity may preclude raising it before the Land Use Board of Appeals. Failure to raise constitutional or other issues relating to proposed conditions of approval with sufficient specificity to allow Wasco County to respond to the issue precludes an action for damages in circuit court. Okay, so at this time, I'd like to ask staff to please present their report.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to correct the record under rules of evidence. It would preclude from the Gorge Commission, since this is a National Scenic Area application. All right. Let me go ahead and share my screen. All right, good morning, commissioners. Daniel Doherty, Senior Planner. I'm going to go ahead and jump right in to this review. So the request is for a dwelling as well as an accessory building, agricultural structures, agricultural implements to include a 900 feet of movable fencing and movable livestock pen, as well as other accessory buildings and structures that are accessory to the residential and proposed farm use of the property, which includes the raising of approximately 13 goats. So in accordance with the underlying zone, the proposed use is allowed subject to additional conditions of approval. The request aligns with the fundamental purpose of the A2 small scale agriculture zone, which is to quote, to protect and enhance small scale agricultural land for agricultural uses, end quote. That's found on page 1 of section 3.130 of the National Scenic Area Land Use and Development Ordinance, or NSA LUDO. So in following our path here, the original request was approved by former Associate Planner Brent Bybee through administrative action on June 24th, 2021. The administrative decision was appealed to the Wasco County Planning Commission, where the Planning Commission approved the request with amendments on October 5th, 2021. Those amendments primarily being Scrivener's errors fixes within the staff report. The Planning Commission decision was properly appealed before this commission. And so the appellant has provided several grounds for appeal that will be addressed later in this report. So we're going to jump into some vicinity maps as well as the submitted site maps for this application. So as you can see, the subject parcel highlighted in red, as well as all north, northwest, and northeast properties are within the A2 small scale agricultural zone. All of the properties south of Husky Road are within the F3 small woodland forest zone. So go ahead and we'll move into the first site map. So there were 4 site maps that were submitted with the application. The first site plan is the most detailed. It really provides the essential layout of the dwelling and the proposed accessory building, as well as outlines where the well is, utilities, proposed grading, existing trees, and other really necessary property development criteria for the planner's review. Second site plan is a little less busy, but it does provide us with the 50-foot fire fuel breaks that we need for Chapter 11, as well as additional setback standards. Now, the third site plan provides the proposal's 5,000 feet of permanent fencing layout, highlighted in blue with green highlighted where the gates are. Also important illustrations on this site map is the delineated wetlands and the proposed buffer between the a piece of the 5,000 foot fencing and the wetland buffer, or in the wetland. And the orientation of the map is a little off, but it provides us with the essentials of what we need for the review. It also provides setbacks for the farm implement or the round gate, as well as the pump house. The fourth site plan provides provides a location of existing vegetation, groups of vegetation, as well as a or an oak forest located on the east side of the property. I went ahead and put together a map, a satellite imagery map that provides a little bit more information. It's oriented properly with the wetlands, the delineated riverine wetlands on the north east side of the property, and the oak forest. Provides the proposed location of the dwelling as well as the accessory building and the existing structures on surrounding parcels. All right, so let's go ahead and move into the issues on appeal. So I'm just going to go ahead and read this into the record. The first issue on appeal requests that the approval of the 900 feet of movable fence not be approved for three primary reasons. Quote, there is an absence of documentation of a development request for 900 feet of movable electric fence. Therefore, there should be no approval. There is no land use ordinance that allows the approval of a development application that is not specifically requested. The inclusion of additional elements in the approval that were not described in the development request does not allow involved parties to adequately participate in the process. That's quote unquote. So staff's analysis of this issue with regards to the requested uses and associated structural development that is reviewable under the NSA Ludo. The notice of administrative action issued on June 3rd, 2021, and both the administrative and planning commission notices of decision are the same. They provide all of the same reviewable structures and buildings. Now, the pre-notice, or what planners call the notice of administrative action, we call it a pre-notice. Lacks the 900 feet of movable fencing, but staff has also determined that the 900 feet of movable fencing is not reviewable under the NSA Ludo. Regarding the 900 feet of movable fencing provided for in both the administrative and planning commission notices of decision, but not the notice of administrative action or the pre-notice, the criteria of the NSA Ludo related to fencing is specifically for permanent or semi-permanent fencing. And so, for example, the 5,000 feet of permanent fencing was provided in both the pre-notice as well as both the administrative and planning commission notices of decision. And so fencing definitions reference built fences like stone, wood, or metal, and do not include movable animal pens or fences. So specifically, section 1.200 provides, and I'll quote it, fence protective, a fence at least 6 feet tall designed to restrict passage through the fence. A protected fence includes stockade, woven wood, chain link, and others, but not split rail or primarily barbed wire, end quote. Furthermore, quote, fence site obscuring, a fence consisting of wood, metal, or masonry, or an evergreen hedge, or other evergreen planting arranged in such a way as to abstract vision, end quote. So there are really no standards for movable objects like movable fencing, farm equipment, water troughs, feeders, those types of farming implements. The definition of agricultural structure lists permanent buildings or storage containers for the storage of farm equipment and supplies, but does not otherwise list the containment of livestock. So specifically, section 1.200 provides the following, quote, agricultural structure / building, a structure or building located on a farm or ranch and used in the operation for the storage, repair, and maintenance of farm equipment and supplies, or for the raising and or storage of crops and livestock. These include, but are not limited to, barns, silos, workshops, equipment sheds, greenhouses, wind machines, processing facilities, storage bins, and structures, end quote. So furthermore, staff found that within the AS Agricultural Special Zone, GMA only, subsection 3.190.b.4 provides that, quote, temporary livestock facilities such as portable livestock pens and corrals, end quote, are allowed uses without review. And so although the subject parcel isn't necessarily within the AS agriculture special zone, staff believes that bit or that piece, that criteria further enhances the finding that the 900 feet of movable fencing is an agricultural implement and not reviewable. As such, the standards for the movable fencing are not addressed in the staff report, or are not necessarily addressed in the staff report because they are not subject to the same regulation as permanent or semi-permanent structures. Based on the lack of review standards, staff concludes movable objects like the 900 feet of movable fencing are permitted without review and thus are not substantive to the application. Therefore, staff concludes it was immaterial for the movable fence to have been noticed. Its presence in the staff report really served only to raise awareness that it had been advised to the applicants to be used as an additional measure to protect the wetlands ultimately. And so the staff recommendation for this first issue on appeal is that we recommend the Wasco County Board of Commissioners dismiss this ground of appeal. All right, so moving on to the second ground for appeal. This request wants the reference, quote, to protect the wetland, end quote, to be removed from any reference of the 900 feet of movable fencing within the staff report, as well as the notice. So the staff report issued with the administrative and Planning Commission notices of decision provides for approximately 900 feet of movable electric fence to protect a wetland. The wetland was illustrated on one of the applicant's site maps that was shown earlier. There's additional commentary on the record between former Wasco County Senior Planner Will Smith and Oregon Departments of Agriculture employee William Matthews that discusses the movable fencing to provide additional wetland protection from a potential animal manure. Will Smith provided the following quote: "They plan on fencing the whole property in with mesh fence, but including a movable strip of electric fence to keep the livestock out of the wetland during wet portions of the year, only allowing the grazing and use of it when it is dry." So there is support in the record that ultimately the 900 feet of movable fencing was to provide additional protection to the delineated wetland on the property. Now, recall from staff's analysis on the first ground of appeal that based on the lack of standards to evaluate movable objects, staff concluded movable objects like the 900 feet of movable fencing are permitted without review and thus are not substantive to the application. Thus, regarding appeal grounds number 2, staff concludes it was immaterial for the movable fence to have been noticed. And again, its presence in the staff report, as well as the notice of decisions, really just served to raise additional awareness to the public that staff had advised the fencing be used for additional wetland mitigation techniques outside of the standard fencing of the 5,000-foot permanent fencing. Thus, staff recommends the Wasco County Board of Commissioners to dismiss this ground of appeal. So appeal grounds number 3, I'll just read this quote: "Appeal 3, the decision to include only a 100-foot setback requirement of the structures in the proposed development is incorrect. It should be modified based upon a 250 setback, based upon the suitability of my property for orchard activity and the absence of a continuous vegetative barrier." So essentially, all of the applicable structures and buildings meet not just the general setback standards of the zone, but the additional agriculture setbacks of the zone. The agriculture setbacks of the zone, which we'll talk about shortly, provide additional setback standards for structures. And so the 50-foot diameter movable round corral, which we believe is a farming implement, was reviewed by previous staff as well as current staff. And it was determined that it met the agricultural setback standards of the zone. This one. So I'm going to go ahead and explain subsection 3.130G3 and how staff analyzes, whether or not a structure or an applicable building meets a specific agricultural setback standard. So the first thing we do as staff, we determine the adjacent property's use and or potential use. And so to do that, we use clear and objective standards in making that determination. So we use United States Department of Agriculture information, satellite imagery, assessor data, site visits, and historic recorded uses. And so for this example, we'll just say that it's very clear on the adjacent property, there's orchard use. So we determined that it's orchard use on the adjacent property. So the second piece is after the determination of the use and or potential use, we determine whether the area of development along the property line contains a natural or created vegetation barrier, whether it's open or fenced, or whether it has an 8-foot berm or terrain barrier. So in this case, staff has determined that there is a natural or created vegetation barrier. And so red and yellow equal orange. The setback standard applied will be 100 feet. I want to also point out that if there is no natural or created vegetation barrier, or if there's no 8-foot berm or terrain barrier, the criteria allows the applicants to plant a vegetative barrier. So that's under sub B. The planting of a continuous vegetative screen may be used to satisfy in part the setback guidelines. So in talking about the present situation, again, staff did analyze the setback for what we believe to be a farm implement. We determined it to be 100 feet from the north property line. Using clear and objective data, we determined that the use, or in this case, the potential use and potential use of the north adjacent property was other. However, even if staff would have determined that it would have been orchard or row crops or livestock grazing or grains or berries, we also determined that there is an existing vegetative barrier, which is the oak stand of the oak forest. And again, we determined that through previous site visits, photographs, and of course, satellite imagery. And that because of that vegetative barrier, that runs along the development. And in this case, we have a 50-foot diameter round pen, that is the development. That vegetative barrier matches that development and thus creates, in this case, a 50-foot setback to the north property. Minimum standard. Of course, the round pen is set back 100 feet in this case. So it does meet all standards, all agricultural setback standards in this case. We believe the application of the continuous vegetative barrier is along the development, not necessarily along the entire property line. So staff believes that, one, the round pen is an agricultural implement, not reviewable. However, we did review it, or we at least provided a setback standard, 100 feet. It's 100 feet from the north property line. In that, it still meets every setback standard applicable with regards to the agricultural setback standards of 100 feet. And it meets it because we've determined it is, the north property is other in terms of use. And again, we use satellite imagery, site visits, historic use to make that determination. It also has a vegetative barrier, which provides in this case, a 50-foot setback. However, the true setback, the true approximated setback of the round pen is 100 feet. So it meets all standards. So in that case, staff recommends the Wasco County Board of Commissioners dismiss this ground of appeal. Our final recommendation is to approve the request as submitted by the applicant with conditions of approval. And I open it for questions.
Thank you, Daniel. Commissioners, do you have any questions for staff at this time?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Doherty. In the opening statement, the opening remarks for the single family dwelling and the accessory building, my math doesn't compute, and so I'm guessing that the dimensions of those two buildings are Scrivener error. Is my question.
Most likely, Commissioner.
I will reference the 1,500 square foot accessory building as a 50 by 40, so that doesn't compute. So I did notice that in Mr. Bybee's report that it was 50 by 30 in that particular action. So just wanted to point that out. And then the other question, as I didn't dig deep into this so that I could have all open and we'd all have the same information today, what was the vote of the Planning Commission on this appeal?
I believe it was, there were no nays, they were all yeas.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have for now, Commissioner Schwartz. Thank you.
Commissioner Hagee.
Yeah, Daniel, I had just a question about wells, because obviously the issue of the well is noted here, but it seems like, and I'm hoping you can kind of give us an overview of this, we don't have a lot of purview over wells. We don't approve wells, do we? And what kind of oversight do we have related to wells in our county?
With regards to the National Scenic Area, it would be considered I've reviewed one, it's considered an agriculture structure. And so in the county, we don't necessarily review them, but in the National Scenic Area, we do. And so from my understanding, there was a well placed in violation, land use violation. And of course, the applicant has since corrected that land use violation by applying for the dwelling, the well, the pump house, those things.
Okay, so let me just quick clarification. So like the well, right, is a hole dug in the ground, no structure. The well house is a structure over it. So is there a delineation between the well itself and the well house, which is a structure?
Well, the well itself, let's just say, we'll call it the hole in the ground, that's ground disturbance. And ground disturbance in the National Scenic Area, if it's new ground disturbance, must be permitted because primarily because of cultural resources, but there are other resources that may necessarily be impacted. The well pump is considered an agricultural structure, from my understanding. The pump house would be considered either an accessory building or an agricultural building. The scenic area delineates buildings and structures.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. So like in a typical, not really related, I'm just trying to get a sense of, like, if somebody has a piece of property and they want to let's just say they wanted to put a well on it for whatever reason, and no structure, no, just drill a well. So that's something that they would have to come and get a National Scenic Area go through a process with Wasco County before, because I think they have to go through a process with state water resources as well, but they actually would have to apply to drill a well in a hole in the ground, essentially.
If it was a new well, yes.
Okay.
Yes. If it's been previously disturbed and they can show it's been previously disturbed, there may be allowances for an expedited review, potentially no review, but those are usually for utilities within road rights of way, those type of, where the ground has been previously disturbed, it's held specific utilities, whether it's water lines or whatnot, for a number of years. So.
Okay. So then in this case, the well issue potentially is resolved with the approval going forward, correct?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
that was essentially the point, from my understanding. This dates back quite a ways, but that's, from my understanding, that's the point of the application in general, was that Mr. Lopez, the current applicant owner, had began the installation of a well, and it was identified by, I believe, our code compliance officer at the time, Chris McNeil, and that it was resolved through this application.
Okay. And then final question was, again, back to the well. Do we have like a connection or communication with Oregon Water Resources on the well? I mean, to know that that box is checked related to them, or is that an issue for us at all?
I believe, and the director may correct me on this, but I believe that they may very well be within our general notification list, but I don't necessarily think that it's our purview after we've issued the permit.
Okay. Thank you.
Chair, if I can address that.
Please do.
For the record, Kelly Housley Glover, Wasco County Planning Director. We do notify Oregon Water Resources Department along with DEQ and North Central Public Health related to all these applications. But if I can just make a statement for the record, it's important that the board only consider the items on appeal, not other elements of the application.
Thanks, Kelly.
Thank you. Okay. Any further questions? You know, I really don't have any questions myself. Thank you, commissioners. Okay, I think then we will go ahead and move on. At this point, I'd like to ask the appellant and or their representative if you would wish to present anything. And if so, please state your name and address for the record. And please note the scope and extent of your testimony shall be limited to issues raised on this appeal. Good morning, Mr. Zernicki.
Unmute. Hi there. My name is Joe Chernicki. My address is 1054 Quartz Drive in Mosier, Oregon. And yes, I'd like to present some information and share my screen if possible. So I'll just like to kind of move forward with that if I could.
Okay.
It looks like the host disabled participant screen sharing. Could I have that turned on, please?
Just give me a moment. I'm looking for you in the long list of participants.
Yes.
And in the meantime, your name is pronounced Chernicki?
Yes, that's correct.
All right, thank you. And welcome and good morning.
Yes, and to you as well. So
Yeah, you should be good to go.
okay. Yes, so I'd just like to kind of move ahead. And first of all, I'd like to thank both the Wasco County Board of Commissioners and Adrian for allowing the continuance. At the time of the previous hearing, I was 5 days post-transplant here at the Mayo Clinic, so really wasn't in my best form to actually participate in the hearing. With that background, once again, I really do appreciate the continuance, allowed me to kind of get back on my feet a bit. So the appeal number one is the request for the approval of the 900-foot of movable fence. And my appeal is that it should not be approved. And there really are two levels of appeal here. One is the process of approval, and the second is the justification of the approval. So with that, I'd like to kind of move forward. And my appeal grounds here is that the process of approval eliminated the ability of adjacent landowners to comment. And my understanding is that this is really a prerequisite of the normal process of approval, that adjacent landowners should have the ability to participate effectively. So if we look at the initial sort of amended application that was sent out to all of the adjacent property owners, this is what was included here. And you can see that there's no language that includes movable fencing. So this was the information that was provided that allowed adjacent landowners the ability to participate in the process. Now, if we go down to the next one, this is actually the report that was generated on June 24th. And what you can see here is that all of a sudden, the description of the development does include 900 feet of movable fencing. So somewhere along the way, there was the addition of the 900 feet of movable fencing, which was not, because it wasn't included in the initial amended application, really prevented any adjacent landowner the ability to participate. So because of that, I feel like it's not appropriate to go ahead and approve it. Adjacent landowners should have the ability to participate in the process. That's a fundamental rule of Wasco County development. And this basically summarizes that, that argument. So now in terms of the justification for the approval, the staff report suggests that because there aren't existing rules that govern movable fencing, that it should be allowed outright. Well, I think that there's a fundamental problem with that. And my view is that the process of, you know, when these development standards were put into place, they couldn't cover every potential contingency of development. And basically, so in this situation, what I have here in this slide is a picture of a construction project in my neighborhood in Seattle. And what you see, this would be considered as movable fencing. So should fencing like this, and 900 feet of it, be allowed outright simply because it's movable? My feeling is that the type of fencing should be included, that it should be, there should be an opportunity for adjacent landowners to respond to the type of fencing that is being proposed. So simply arguing that just because there are no standards for it shouldn't allow its use outright, but rather you should incorporate some sort of a process that allows adjacent landowners to participate in the decision and really understand what the type and extent and why this movable fencing is being put into place. Not sure why I'm not advancing here. Oh, here we go. You know, and as I mentioned, that really any development standard can't incorporate every potential situation that might arise. So what you need to do is to guide it by the fundamental goals of those development standards in the first place. And then here, in terms of the fencing, that fencing should be evaluated on the potential to impact deer and elk winter range, sensitive areas, et cetera, plus its visual impact. You know, and here, for example, you know, drones are increasingly being used in agriculture, and simply because the Wasco County development standards don't include drones as part of their development process, should they be allowed outright without restriction just because they aren't included in the development standards? So I think that there's a fundamental flaw in the argument just because it's not included in the current development standards that it should be allowed outright. If you set that precedent, then anything that's not included in the current development standards should be allowed outright. And I think that there is risk associated with that. So once again, I think the 900 feet of movable fencing should not be allowed on the basis of those two appeal arguments. Further, I fail to understand the logic here, and I think Mr. Doherty kind of presented this map as well. So what you see here is the kind of turquoise blue line, which is the fixed fencing. And you can see that it is 150 feet away from the wetland line on the east side of the property. So if you have fixed fencing that already protects the wetland, why do you need 900 feet of movable fencing to protect the wetland? Because the presumption is that this perimeter fencing is going to protect his proposed agricultural use of protecting his 13 goats, which he's actually wanting to do from an agricultural perspective. So I think this further supports the kind of the flaw in the argument that you need the 900 feet of fencing. There's no justification for the 900 feet of fencing because you already have a fixed fence which is protecting the wetland. So I think now we've got a composite of three arguments that really suggest that the 900 feet of movable fencing should not be allowed. Okay, in terms of appeal number 3, this is the setback requirement, and the decision was that there should be a 100-foot setback requirement. And I think that this is, once again, fundamentally flawed. You know, Mr. Doherty reviewed that there are general setback requirements, and then there are superimposed on that the agricultural setbacks, and he did a great job of kind of describing, you know, the agricultural ability, and not only the existing agricultural ability, but the suitability of the adjacent property for agricultural activity. And I agree with his consensus that my property is suitable for orchard activity. And therefore, as defined here in the yellow, it should either be 250 feet setback requirement of all structures. If it is open, 100 feet if there is a natural or created vegetation barrier, and 75 feet if there is a berm or terrain barrier. So now the question is it open? Is it a vegetative barrier, or is it a berm? And really the definition of a vegetative barrier, as once again Mr. Doherty pointed out, is that it needs to be a continuous vegetative screen, and it should either be existing or to be planted along the property. My argument is that there is no continuous vegetative screen. This is a picture looking north towards the Lopez property, and at the tip of the blue arrow here, that is the end of my property. So I would not see this and say that there is a continuous vegetative barrier. It is really open grassland with a couple of trees. In addition to that, if you look at the whole property line, this black line that you see coming down to my property, which is identified as the rectangular house, there are 4 pine trees sitting there. And the pine trees have no branches below about 20 feet. They're fairly substantial in terms of height, but there are no branches below about 20 feet from the ground. So once again, between the visual image of the picture and this, it clearly illustrates that there is no continuous vegetative barrier. Therefore, it is an open grassland, and the setback should be 250 feet. In the prior appeal level, Mr. Doherty also argued that my property may not be used for agricultural activity, but it sounds like that's not a current issue. But what I did here was to look at the soil survey to illustrate the fact that the soils on my property, which are the enclosed by the blue area here, are essentially equivalent to the soils on the adjacent properties here and here, which are currently being used for agricultural activity. The difference in color simply reflects the difference in the slope of the terrain rather than the fundamental difference in the actual agricultural soil type. So the soils on my property are suitable for orchard activity on the basis of the adjacent property use of actual orchard activity. Once again, I don't see that there is a fundamental argument that my property could not be used for orchard activity. Furthermore, I think, certainly, as you all know, that in the Mosier Valley area, orchard infrastructure is soundly in place. There's no reason that orchard activity couldn't occur from a fundamental business perspective. The infrastructure is in place to support orchard activity. And certainly the rainfall characteristics are no different on my property compared to the adjacent two properties. So I think it is clear that my property can be used for orchard activity. So the argument here is that the setback requirement should be 250 feet on the basis is that there is no continuous vegetative screen by the Ludo definition of vegetative screen. Orchard activity certainly is suitable for the use of my property, and orchard activity does require a 250-foot setback if there is no continuous vegetative screen or if there is no berm. So I think I've shown clearly that this is the case, and therefore I would argue that there should be in place a 250-foot setback rather than the proposed 150-foot setback with the definition of my property being other. That concludes my presentation. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chernicki. Commissioners, do you have questions for Mr. Chernicki?
Trying to think.
Okay, sure. Take a moment to think. That's allowable.
It's a good thing.
I guess one of the questions I have is, you've laid out your appeal items and your justification for them, but it's not clear to me what is maybe behind all of them. Is it because my sense is, and I could have this wrong, but my sense is you're mostly concerned about visual and like what you can and cannot see from your property. Is that an accurate statement, or is it about use?
Well, it's a couple of things. I mean, I guess, perhaps I'm being sort of too rigid, but and part of me sort of feels like what's right should be right? Isn't that, something that we all strive for? And to me, really, if you shouldn't be able to change the application along the way. And I still don't know how that happened, why it moved from what was described as an amended application to all of a sudden including this 900 feet of movable fence. And then the fact that you are now saying that we should allow 950 feet of movable fence to protect the wetland when you already have a fence there, it makes me wonder, well, if things are movable, why are they movable? What criteria is the landowner going to use to shift this fence? Will it really be used to replace the fixed fencing and then allow animals to graze on the wetland? It's sort of like, why are things moving here? Why do you need movable fence? What are the criteria that Mr. Lopez are going to use to move this fence back and forth? So it does raise some fundamental concerns about, well, why is it being moved? And, so I think that deserves clarity, because downstream, if it's being moved for reasons that may not be appropriate, it will have been allowed. Whereas if it's not allowed, or if there needs to be a reapplication for the 900 feet of movable fence, then we can say, okay, he's going to apply for 900 feet of movable fence. He'll need to explain why that fence should be there, what the criteria are for being able to move that fence, so everybody has a clear understanding of the purpose of that 900 feet of movable fence. Right now, the purpose as described to protect the wetland, when you already have a fixed fence that's protecting the wetland, just doesn't make sense to me. So that's one issue. And then the 250-foot setback, once again, I think protection of the visual aspects from my property are a concern. I'll be perfectly honest with you. Because if you have a 100-foot setback, then that would allow Mr. Lopez at some point in the future to build another structure within that 100-foot setback, because that was the setback that was determined to be appropriate. So it opens up potentially Pandora's box for the future if he should decide to build an equipment shed or whatever. Then it will have already been decided that 100-foot setback was appropriate for the agricultural activity, and therefore I will not be able to rebut that in the future. Whereas if it's 250 feet, then that will ultimately limit not only the current development, but all future development as well. So those are my reasons for my appeal. Thank you for your question.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the movable fence is an interesting point from a standpoint of like livestock. A movable electric fence is nothing like the construction fence that you indicated in your presentation typically. So, and usually you want to have cross fencing or something, ability to do that because you want to graze animals in different places. Sure. Obviously, so I don't know what Mr. Lopez, I'm sure he'll maybe explain that, but okay, that was all the questions I had. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Commissioner Kramer, do you have any questions at this time?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. To the first point about the amended application, did you not get to participate in the October 5th Planning Department hearing?
Yes, I did.
Okay. All right, and thank you. And Commissioner Hagee touched on the reason of a movable fence. Wasco County is 98% agriculture, and we've got a long history in that. And the reason that our growers and producers move fences is to protect and conserve their ground, not only to feed their stock, but to make sure that they're good stewards of the land. And to the third point of the vegetative screen, I do believe I saw somewhere where that the applicant could plant a screen, and so that the screen would eventually be there. So those are just a couple of my observations on this. Not so many questions, Chair, but just observation. Thank you very much.
Could I respond, Chair? Or is that appropriate?
I'll ask staff to help me there.
This is a question and answer session between you, yourselves, and as well and the appellant. So even though there wasn't a direct question by Commissioner Kramer, I guess it would be up to Commissioner Kramer in this case.
Thank you, Mr. Doherty, Chair. Like I said, and like you stated in the early beginning, that there was going to be no debate. So I think that staff has done a good job, and I think Mr. Narnixy has made his points well, and I think that's where we'll leave it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I would agree. And the only comment that I would have is, I think it's important to note that at this time and at the time, there is no orchard. So, I would assume that that's, what we're really looking for is, the potential for an orchard in the future really doesn't appear to be relevant at this time, and there is no orchard. So, and that's what we are reviewing for. So,
well, it is the criteria.
Thank you, Mr. Chernicky. Thank you. All right. Okay. So any further comments, questions, commissioners? Okay.
I just, yeah, maybe Chair, if I may, we did notice that all of our agency folks have chimed in and have no negative comments to present to us within this report. Just would like that to be made aware of, as we didn't have that in our, or I missed it in the original staff presentation earlier on. So thank you for that, Chair.
Sure, thank you. And it certainly is in the full report in our board packet, so. Okay. All right, so if there are no further questions of the commissioners, I'm going to move on to ask if our applicant or their representative wishes to rebut at this time. And if so, again, please state your name and address and understand that your rebuttal should be limited to issues raised during the testimony and not to introduce new evidence.
Yes, my name is Adrian Lopez. I live at 1150 Husky Road, Mosier, Oregon. To the first point of the fence, I was told that the movable fence, it wasn't for review, and regardless, I still gave a sample. It's 2 or 3 strands of fencing that for grazing purposes. Why I wanted it in there and for protecting the wetland. As for the setback, the property directly to the north, which is the Paulin, his property, his buildings are well within the 200 feet that he's wanting me to comply with. And so the natural barrier, Daniel put a picture, like a satellite view, and you could see in it all the trees that are around. They're definitely considered a barrier in my mind. So yeah, that's just a couple things I had to say.
Thank you, Mr. Lopez, and good morning to you as well. All right. Okay. Commissioners, any questions or comments at this time?
I just maybe had a quick question for Mr. Lopez. So this discussion about
Commissioner Hagee, could I interrupt you for 1 second?
Yep.
I'm sorry. I just want to check with staff and our attorney to make sure that the commissioners are allowed to question or comment to the applicant at this time. My guide does not say that specifically, so I want to make sure that we're following everything correctly here.
Yes, Chair, that's acceptable. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, Commissioner Hagee. Okay.
So I just wanted a clarification. So the fence, Mr. Lopez, the fence, I guess maybe it's been defined as the permanent fence protecting the wetland. Is that because you just mentioned about using the movable fence for protecting the wetland? Are there other wetlands or other areas you're trying to protect? And is this permanent fence going to be the primary protection for that wetland area that the livestock's not supposed to be on?
Yes, the permanent fence goes around the perimeter of the property, and the movable fence is for protecting the wetland and for grazing purposes, which will be moved in different areas.
But I guess my question is there, when I looked at the maps that we were shown, it seemed like there was a permanent fence that would fully and completely protect the wetland without the movable fence. Is that accurate? And because I was thinking you were going to use the movable fence more for grazing in different areas with outside of that wetland area that's already protected by the permanent fence.
Yeah, that fencing was the permanent was supposed to be around the perimeter of the property. And yeah, sorry. Yeah, that was because there was probably like 3 or 4 different amended applications that I submitted, going along with what was recommended from different agencies.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
That was all I had.
Thank you, Commissioner Hagee. Anything for you, Commissioner Kramer?
Not at this time, Chair. Thank you.
And I have no questions either. Thank you very much, Mr. Lopez. Okay, at this time, I would like to open up and ask if there are any persons who wish to speak in favor of the request. Please unmute yourself or raise your hand. I'll look for you. Okay, seeing none. I didn't miss anybody, I don't think. All right. And are there any persons who wish to speak in opposition of the request? Same thing, please unmute or raise your hand and I'll call on you.
Oh, Kathy, I have my hand raised.
Okay, oh, there you are, Sheila Dooley.
Yeah, 3300 Bensel Road, Mosier. Oh yeah, I'm neutral. I'm not speaking for or against, but I just had a comment on the in the staff report, but it talked about the 50-foot fire break. The Wasco, I just want for clarification, the Wasco County Ludo doesn't, they have talked about 50-foot fire fuel break around structures, but they don't prohibit trees within 50 feet of structures. Trees need to be limbed up 8 feet, but trees are encouraged in this area to provide shade and ground cooling. And this probably doesn't affect this application, but I just wanted to make that comment for the future reference. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sheila. Certainly you can take that up with staff, but at this time we're asking for persons who wish to speak in opposition of the request. Okay. Seeing no more hand raises. All right. Okay, so does the commission have any other questions for anyone, including staff?
No, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
I would have a question for Daniel and or Kelly related to, so you heard what the appellant provided as justification for the appeal. So my question to either or both of you is, was there anything you heard that would that you were not aware of or would change your recommendation to us?
Thank you, Commissioner. The question was two-part. It was one for me and one for Kelly, but I'll answer it unless Kelly chimes in. The appellant provided within his reports the same issues or that he raised within the written appeal request. So no new information was provided. I would like to provide that the potential use of an adjacent property within the large scale or small scale agriculture will be reviewed upon each application. And so in 5 years, this is an example, 5 years, there is an active orchard there, or there has been some difference that we can use as planners. We will examine the clear and objective evidence to determine the use and or potential use of that property. So unlike your regular standard setbacks, the agricultural setbacks aren't necessarily static because the potential use or the use of a property changes over time. And so it would be reviewed as new, right, with a new application. And so I just wanted to correct that point. So a determination now of other doesn't necessarily mean that in 10 years that it will remain other. Another planner may very well find clear and objective data from a site visit. There's an orchard being installed and put up right now, and that may very well adjust their analysis on a specific request. So if a request for an accessory building in 5 years is requested by Mr. Lopez, and it's within 100 feet of an area that is not vegetated, right? And we determine that the north property is in fact an orchard or is being used as an orchard, at that time, we may very well find a different setback standard. So does that make sense? I just want to make sure that that makes sense.
So, yeah, let me make sure. So, but in the analysis today, with the use today, that's what your recommendations are based on. So in the future, if something changed on an adjacent property and there was additional development to go on the other property, then there might be a different setback, for example.
Yes, Commissioner.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Okay. Any further questions from commissioners? Okay. I'm not seeing any, and I don't have any. So if there's no further testimony or questions, the public hearing is now closed and we will enter into deliberation, just the commissioners. And we certainly can ask further questions of staff at this time, the three of us. So I think that the last clarification that Daniel talked about was a question that I had, but I understand the answer, and that was my understanding to begin with. So and so how about Commissioner Hague, Kramer, any further deliberation, questions for staff amongst each other?
No questions. No questions from me.
And no questions for me, Madam Chair. I'm willing to make a motion if it's appropriate.
I have no questions or further comments, so please make a motion.
Okay, Madam Chair, I'll move to dismiss appeal number 1, dismiss appeal number 2, and dismiss appeal number 3, and uphold the Planning Commission's decision.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, does that motion fit the requirements, staff? Okay.
Yes, Chair.
Okay, so any further discussion?
I had just a quick comment. So, you know, in situations like this where we have neighbors, you know, appealing development, my hope would be that both Mr. Lopez and Mr. Zernicki, I'm sorry, I can't pronounce your name properly, but my hope is always that neighbors can kind of work together. You know, what the appealed items are movable fence, which I think is going to be, I understand your concern if you had a bunch of bright orange construction fence. From a visual standpoint, I would not probably want that flapping in the wind next to me either, but I don't think that's what is going to be proposed. And I think the round pen maybe have some flexibility because that's a completely movable thing as well. You're not talking about structure. So I guess my point is, and my hope is that, you know, the two of you would be able to communicate and, you know, work out some of these maybe concerns going forward and be good neighbors and all that kind of stuff. So that's always my hope, that neighbors would be, you know, supporting and encouraging and helping neighbors and, you know, working together, and it's much better that way. So that I would encourage you, hopefully both, to kind of work in that direction. And if I can be of any help, I would be happy to do that.
Okay, any further discussion? Thank you, Commissioner Hague. Well said. Okay, hearing none. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
And chair votes aye. Okay, the motion passes. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate your attendance and Mr. Chernicky, wish you get well soon for sure. So, all right. And that is and we have concluded the hearing and okay. Anything else we need, staff, before we move on?
No, Chair. Thank you,
All right.
commissioners. Have a good day.
Thank you. All
Thanks,
right.
Daniel.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay. All right. Kathy, do we have our district staff here?
Let me take a peek.
We're just a tad bit early. And so
I see Jeff. I'm assuming that that's Jeff Wawrnek.
okay.
And I see Kim, and Kim is here from the Extension Service District, and she's the one under kind of a time constraint, which is why the districts are up first and why she's up first for the districts.
All right. All right, thank you. Okay, thank you guys for being here. We're just a tad bit early, but I think we'll just go ahead and get started. So, all right, so we are now going to recess from our regular session and open a meeting for the 4-H and Extension Service District. So welcome, Kim, and whoever else is with you. Is that Leah as well with you? Okay, great. Okay.
And Kenneth Allen is the auditor who will present their audit.
Okay, so I guess we will call this meeting to order of the 4-H and Extension Service District. Okay, so first up is the audit, Kim.
I don't know if you just want me to go forward with it and I can go through the audit pretty quickly. The audit was designed to determine fair presentation with generally accepted accounting principles, audit standards, as well as Oregon municipal audit law. On page 1 of the financial report, we issued our financial opinion, which is an unmodified opinion, which is the highest level of opinion you can receive. On page 16, this is what we have, what we call our Oregon minimum standards for audits. This is additional audit procedures that is required by the State Division of Audits. So we look at things such as budget, collateral, debt, public purchasing, and a few other items, and we found no issues requiring comment in that area as well. So opinion in that area. There was no disagreements with staff, no difficulties in doing the audit engagement, and we commend staff for basically having good accounting records. And I know they're in the middle of a software conversion and obviously in the middle of COVID, and still getting these reports out is should be commendable for your finance staff as well as the other management involved. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Allen, did you state your name for the record? I can't remember.
I didn't, sorry. It's Kenneth Allen with Polly Rogers and Company.
Okay, thank you. All right. Thank you for that. Any questions, commissioners?
No, Madam Chair, just comment that thank you, Mr. Allen, and I appreciate the great report, and thanks to the Extension Group for their fiscal management, and look forward to our upcoming budget meetings. Thank you.
Okay. Anything from you, Scott?
No, nothing. I would concur with Commissioner Kramer. The net position seems like it's up slightly for the year, so that's a good thing. So I'm assuming, Mr. Allen, that's accurate.
Yep.
All right. Thank you. No, I have no questions.
All right. Yeah, great job, Kim, for sure. So do you have any comments, Kim?
No, I just wanted to know if I could take this time to update the commissioners on what's going on with extension, if I could take that opportunity.
Sure. Regarding the audit, there's no action necessary, correct? We just need to submit it and, okay. All right. Sure, Kim, if you want to take a minute before we go to the budget appointment and update us, that's just fine.
Great. We've talked a lot about staffing for Wasco County, and we're getting there. And so we're most excited to introduce Leah Lowe, who is here taking Lynette Black's position as 4-H program outreach coordinator. And Leah's here, and I'll give her an opportunity in a minute to tell us a little bit about herself. We also have a new faculty research assistant for Ashley Thompson to aid her in her research efforts. She's been struggling to get everything done. So we were able to add that to our budget. It is a 90% county funded position. So thanks to our service district dollars for that. We're in the process of hiring another county funded position for master gardener coordinator. Our previous one left and went back to Kentucky to be with family. So I'm covering that position right now. And hopefully we'll have somebody on in the spring for that. But staff continues to adjust to COVID restrictions and to keep programming going. Lou Seepy's STEM program is still forefront for Wasco County, and she keeps thinking of innovative ideas to share. Her newest one is Oregon 4-H Virtual Career Fair on February 10th, and she'll have presenters in everything from the aerospace industry to wildlife rehab, and it's free and open to all youth. She still continues with the robotics support and has 2 high school teams advance to the US Open for National Vex Robotics. And they place 1st and 3rd in the robot games. Bob has the STEM educator is still working with computer video clubs at Colonel Wright and Chenoweth and at Gateway. Jacob Powell is adjusting his programming and has done a couple in person before Omicron took our numbers out, and did pesticide trainings, but his latest classes for first aid switched to virtual, and he'll try again in March to get an in-person class, but right now he's going strictly virtual. Lauren Kramer is still working on the Cascadia Subduction Zone training event and getting the word out on that, which is a free online program with 4 modules, teaching people to be aware and be prepared for the Cascadia event. And then she also is working with Ashley for smoke monitoring and communication efforts, where the monitors will be placed in the orchards in both Wasco and Hood River. Ashley has talked to Mimi McDonald and is continuing with her winter hort meetings, but is offering a virtual option for people. And Andrea, same thing for the Juntos program. She continues to work with promoting post-secondary education for the high school, and for starting with families, working with the students in the middle school. Ann Harris is working with the Land Stewards program and has that going right now, currently virtual, hoping to bring in some personal, and they work on fire risk reduction, pasture management, and controlling invasive weeds, and they end up with a property management plan. Master Gardener classes will start in 2 weeks, and we're down to 30 people, but in light of how things are right now, I'm delighted that it's that small of a group so we can meet in person and socially distance and continue on with that program. It's been pretty popular. So Leah, would you like to say a few words about yourself and introduce yourself to the commissioners?
Yes, now that I'm unmuted. And so I would just like to introduce myself to you guys, and I hope to see your faces and work with you as I get settled into this community. My name is Leah Lowe, and I grew up in Western Oregon, went to college in Montana at Montana State and got an agricultural education degree. And so I'm fairly new to this area as I start this job. I was only here for about 2 weeks before I started working at the extension office. But I am living down in the Tye Valley area. So I hope that that serves me as a strength to serve South County and be a presence down there, and have an office up here in the Dalles. So I'm hoping to geographically get that reach in this community. And when I think of how I want to impact 4-H here in Wasco County, I think you guys have a wonderfully diverse county. It's a very big county. And I hope to increase learning opportunities across the county and really get to know Wasco County before and assess their needs before I really get going, so I can serve 4-Hers in this community to the best of my ability. So I'm excited to be here and excited to work with you all.
Great.
I
Great.
also have Nicole Strong, my regional director, and to give just a brief update on state and regional activities.
Kathy, did you have a question for Leah?
No, just a welcome, and it's a pleasure to meet you. And so we'll look forward to seeing you in the coming year for sure. Nicole, did you want to take a minute and tell us what's going on at the state level?
Sure, briefly. First of all, I'm just thrilled that we've hired such high quality educators. As you know, the hiring market is challenging right now. So I think it's a testament to the program that you have here and the impact of extension that we're able to recruit such wonderful people in Hood River and Wasco County. So I'm also thrilled that you're here, Leah. At the state level, some of you got the chance to meet with Dr. Ivory Lyles, our new extension director. He still has a few more counties to visit in the next few months. And his goal is to, build his strategy based on the feedback he's capturing from all the communities across the state. We're also in the short session right now. And as you know, OSU Extension is funded through federal, state, and local contributions. And our state funding for the statewide is what we call OSU Extension Service, Ag Experiment Stations, and the Forest Research Laboratory has either flatlined or slightly decreased over the years. And even a flatline is a decrease for us as salaries and benefits go up. So we're making a request right now to get current service level. So an increase that would allow us to fill a few of our vacant positions. So any opportunity you have to support that request, it really helps us leverage your contributions, right? And we want everybody to do their part to make this whole. So any questions about that? Our COVID policies remain pretty consistent. We're not planning on shutting down again anytime soon. We have tools at our disposal that we've learned to use to be nimble and responsive to changing conditions. So I think we're going to hold steady and hopefully things start improving soon. Kim, anything else you wanted me to?
I think we're good.
All right, perfect. Nice to see everyone.
And you all as well. Thank you. You guys do amazing work. I'm always amazed at the different, programs that you're involved in for our community. So thank you.
Well, Kathy, I thank you. I hold Wasco County up as an example to some of my other counties where it's a tougher ask if we don't have a service district, and the way we're able to leverage the funds from the county to expand capacity and programming, it's exponential. If you just look at Lou's example, the county pays for Lou writes grants, Lou hires 2 people. It's amazing. So this programming in Wasco is phenomenal, and it's because of this partnership.
Great, thank you for that. We love to be held as an example of doing good work, so thank you. All right, so I think with that, we're going to move on to our next business item, which is, I believe we have a budget committee appointment for 4-H and extension on the docket here. Is there?
We do, and I'll just briefly say that the Wasco County Budget Committee also serves as the budget committee for the 4-H and Extension Service District. And so the board has already appointed all of a sudden Diora to that committee. And so this is really just housekeeping to get her appointed to the Extension Service District Budget Committee. Diora Patton.
I would move to approve order 22-005, appointing Diora Patton to the 4-H Extension Service District Budget Committee.
Thank you, Commissioner, and I'll second the motion.
All right, thank you. We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please vote aye.
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 And chair votes aye. Okay, great. So Diora will be a great addition to our combined budget committee. So thank you. All right, I think that's all the business for 4-H and extension.
Madam Chair, we've got one more. Go ahead.
Uh-oh.
I would move to approve December 15th, 2021 4-H and Extension District Service minutes.
And I will
right.
second the motion.
All right. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Chair votes aye. Thank you for that, colleagues. All right. So with that, I think we're done. I will go ahead and close or adjourn the extension meeting, and we will now open a meeting for the Library Service District. So good morning, Jeff. There you are. Good morning. Good morning. And
good morning, everybody.
Yeah. Library service. So it looks like we also have an audit report for the library district to go through, correct?
We do.
Yep.
All right. And Mr. Allen, are you going to be presenting that as well?
I will. Pretty much the same as the other one. The overall opinion of the library is on page 1 of the large financial report. It's an unmodified opinion. It's the highest level of opinion that you get, so no reservations. It's plain opinion. Next, on page 16, we have our order minimum standards report, which is additional procedures above and beyond what's required by audit standards. And we look at things such as budget, collateral debt, public purchasing programs funded from outside sources, and a few other areas. We found no issues requiring comment in that area as well. Also, there was no difficulties in doing the audits, no disagreements with staff or management. If there were any of those, we'd have to tell you about that. Beyond that, if you have any questions on the library audit, I'm happy to answer any of your questions.
Questions or comments, commissioners?
None from me, thank you.
No, my only comment is similar to extension, that the ending balance for the ending position is up slightly. So going in a good direction, I guess.
I would agree. That's it's especially good news, seeing as how we've had to pivot so many things this last year, for sure. So it just is a testament to how well, things have worked out, and the library is still viable and doing well. So with that, thank you, Mr. Allen. I'll turn it over to Jeff. And maybe you would like to give us a little report on the library doings. We have a little time to do that. So welcome.
Sure. I'd love to. So like 4-H and extension, the library district there's been a lot of personnel changes, I should say. So Maupin has a new librarian, Valerie Stevenson. She's doing a fantastic job. She was the librarian down there a few years ago, and she went and worked in a library in the suburbs of Portland. But I guess the grass isn't always greener, and she wanted to come back to Maupin, and she really missed the area. So, and Maupin Library just happened to have an opening, and yeah, she's doing great. She's interacting with the community. She's writing grants. She's the patrons down there love her, so she's doing great. Duffer, so this, in the current fiscal year, the library district gave Duffer more money so they could hire an assistant, and that's been working out fantastic. I talked to Sarah, the librarian in Duffer, and she just raves about the new assistant. So, and the new assistant's been really, really helpful in taking some of the load off of Sarah. So that situation's worked out just sort of how we planned it. So that's been great. The Dells Library, we've had a lot of openings as well. In October, we hired a full-time cataloger. We also hired a full-time front desk person. And then we hired a part-time library page. And then last week, we hired a programmer and backup cataloger. So we've had some turnover in staff, but we're really, really pleased with everybody we've hired. They've been very impressive. And I was just commenting to my staff yesterday, the person we hired last week has just been awesome. She's just been, she finishes a task and she's asking me what should I do next? So it's really great. The Dells Library has some new sculptures that were donated to the library. So in the courtyard, there's a heron, a bird, and then also we had the question marks on the front lawn. In the library, we have a sculpture sitting on the floor, kind of in the center of the library, which is new. And then up in the maker space, we have a bouquet of wrenches, which is a really cool sculpture. So Alan Root donated the sculptures, and they're pretty awesome. So we always get a lot of favorable comments from patrons. Children's Wing continues to be a big destination for families in the area. A lot of families are interacting with all the educational equipment we have in there. Recently, we got these big magnetic cushy blocks. So the kids have been loving those, and they've been extremely creative with those things. There was a young lady, she must have been about 8, 9 years old. She took the blocks and she built like this huge throne for a queen. And then she was sitting in it reading a book. It was pretty cool. Yeah, that whole area has been extremely busy. As far as the collection, our digital collection continues to see phenomenal growth. The Library to Go collection, which patrons and Wasco County residents can access 24/7. Audiobooks and digital books, extremely popular. The library in this current, well, actually last spring, we started our own Advantage account. So any titles in Library to Go that have a lot of, have a high hold ratio, which means a lot of people want them, we'll go in and buy more copies just for the residents of Wasco County. And that's been extremely popular. I mean, for example, the title Dune, the book Dune, the science fiction book, it's checked out like close to 30 times, and we've only owned it for about 6 months. So yeah, the phenomenal circulation there. I just got the bill yesterday for Canopy, which is our online video platform. We kind of set a record. It was my highest bill, which is good because we pay by checkout, which is kind of nice. So it's, we're not paying for something that's not being used. We only pay for usage. So yeah, we set a record yesterday for the month of December. So there's a lot of classic film that people can access for free, a lot of independent films, a lot of documentaries, a lot of how-to films, like on cooking and stuff like that. And then there's a bunch of stuff just devoted to kids. So that's been very popular. And I guess I'll end with this. So we're doing a ton of programming, but it's been interesting. So we're doing a hybrid since the library's open now. So we'll have an in-person program. Like, for example, a couple weeks ago, we had a science fiction book club. You know, like 2 or 3 people showed up for the book club, but we also Zoomed the meeting. So we had like 8 people, you know, attending through Zoom. So the hybrid programming and the Zoom programming is continuing to do well, even though we're open. So it might kind of change our service dynamic as we move forward. I mean, part of it might be the weather. You know, it's winter, it's cold out, people don't want to come out, so they'd rather just attend the book club over Zoom. But we'll see when the weather warms up if people are still wanting to stay home and Zoom our programming, or if they want to come in person. But so it just sort of an interesting development. But yeah, I've got a lot of new staff, and it's invigorating. They have a lot of fresh ideas, and we're doing a lot of cool things for Valentine's Day. I didn't realize you could do these things, but pretty cool. So thank you. I guess that's about it. Any questions, I guess? I'll take questions.
Any question? I mean, I would just comment, you guys do so many creative things. I really have to get down there and see those sculptures. Public art is just such a wonderful thing. And the more we can, you know, see it and have it, the better for our community. So that just sounds like a wonderful addition. It's great.
It is, and thank you.
Yeah. Anybody else?
Yeah, Commissioner Schwartz, I'll just echo Jeff, you and your staff are doing an outstanding job, and thank you for all that you do.
Great.
Oh, you're welcome.
Okay. Well, okay, now we have 2 items of business for the library district. So the first one is similar to the extension, just the appointment to the budget committee.
So we actually have 2 appointments for the Library Service District. One is Dior Patton for the Budget Committee, and like the Extension Service District, the Library Service District's Budget Committee is the same as it is for Wasco County. So this is housekeeping to get her appointed to that, so that when the budget hearings are done, everybody's there all at the same time. And the other appointment you have is Corliss Marsh, and she's already been serving. In fact, Corliss Marsh has a long history with the library. I believe she was appointed before and had met the wall where you couldn't be appointed again because they only allow 2 consecutive. So she had to step off of that, and she has been reappointed. There was some confusion as to the appointment process for a representative from the Dalles. And so the city believed that was their authority to do that. And they went ahead and appointed her last summer. And so we recently discovered that kind of glitch in the process. And so the appointment that you have before you today retroactively appoints Corliss to when she was appointed by the city of the Dalles, so that all of the votes that were taken are valid votes, and her appointment is in place.
Okay.
With
All
that,
right.
I will move to approve Order 22-004, appointing Dior Patton to the Library Service District Budget Committee, and Order 22-003, appointing Corliss Marsh to the Library Service District Board of Directors.
Thank you, Commissioner, and I'll second your motion.
Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 And chair votes aye. Okay, we got that done. I guess Corliss got a double appointment. She's doubly, the city and the county want her, so that's great. And now I believe we have minutes as well to approve. Is that right?
I would move to approve the December 15, 2021 Library Service District minutes as presented.
And I'll second. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And I didn't hear you, Scott. Did you say aye?
I did say aye, yeah. Aye.
Okay. And chair
Very,
votes-
very quietly.
Okay, chair votes aye. Okay, thank you. Anything else before we close this part of the meeting? Okay, I'll go ahead and close the library district meeting. And we will now resume the regular session of the Board of County Commissioners. All right, thank you. Okay. I've got just a couple minutes before we go to Mike Middleton. So at this time, I'd like to open up for any public comment of anyone that's with us today that would like to address the commissioners. Okay. Well, I don't hear anyone, but I do appreciate all of you that are with us and engaged in listening. So thanks for being here. So, okay. So it looks like we can just move a little bit ahead of schedule. Looks like Mike is here and surprise, Mr. Allen again. So we'll move forward for the Wasco County Annual Audit Report. Morning again. Morning, Mike.
Morning. We're just going to go ahead and let Mr. Allen take it away. And if there's any questions that come up for me, I'll be more than happy to address those.
Okay.
Great. Well, thanks for having me. The audit was designed to determine fair presentation with generally accepted accounting principles, audit standards, Oregon municipal audit law, as well as the federal single audit act. For the county, on page A1 of the financial report, this is our overall opinion. It's an unmodified opinion, which is highest level opinion you can receive. So next we have our Oregon minimum standards report, which is on page J1, where we look at things such as budget, collateral, debt, programs funded from outside sources, insurance, and a few other items. We had no issues requiring comment in that area, so another clean opinion. Next, we have what we call our federal single audit act opinions, where you spend more than $750,000 of federal money. We have to go in and look at a program or two of the federal programs. This year, we did a single audit. I think sometimes we do, sometimes we don't do a single audit, but with the coronavirus money, excuse me, we definitely had to go in and look at that program, and we didn't find any issues or question costs with that. So I commend staff for being on top of that program, since a lot of the money came out before even the regulations did. So commend staff for doing their due diligence on that. Next, there's basically, in summary, there was no difficulties in doing the engagement, no disagreements. If there were, we'd have to report those to you. Again, I'd like to commend staff for all their hard work and the good accounting records. I mean, obviously they're, like everybody else, is dealing with COVID and remote work. And on top of that, I think they are eager to get into a new software system. So that also took a lot of time and effort. So staff should be commended for doing about 3 or 5, 20 things at once this year. Lastly, I just like to bring your attention to, there's a new accounting standard that will be put in place next year. It's a new way of looking at leases. I won't bore you with the details, but I'll just let you know that next year there will be some changes, and myself and Mike will be working through those in the next coming months. So if you have any questions on the county audit, I'd be happy to answer them.
Are there going to be a lot of changes next year?
No, there will be some changes. We'll have to report some leases on the balance sheet, which will look a little different. And also the There are new audit standards where our opinions will look a little bit different, but for the most part, it's not going to be substantively different. There's not going to be any real huge changes, just minor tweaks that our profession seems to like to do every year.
And thank you. Mike, do you have any comments or would you like to add anything?
Yeah, the audit took a little bit longer this year because we were juggling so many different factors. But actually, things seem to go very fast and smooth for having to reconcile two systems as we were going forward. Made a few different challenges, but we were able to do it. And I was glad we were able to meet the auditor's needs and not frustrate them unduly. There's always some frustration, but you don't want to push it past the threshold that you have to. So.
Well said. Commissioners, comments, questions?
I guess my only comment and question for Mr. Allen is our net position seemed to change a little this year. Significantly.
Significantly?
Mr. Allen, we can't hear you when you turn your head.
Yeah, sorry,
So-
my other monitor's way over here, and that's where the
Oh,
report
okay.
is. Sorry. The net position change.
So it looks like it was 6.1 million to the positive, which is significant, even for us.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that go into those numbers. I mean, obviously, that's not the budgetary, that's kind of the overall numbers. And really in the past, a lot of the GASB 68, which is your share of the pension liability, was going up a lot higher than it has in this coming year. So there's that. Your investment in joint ventures went up by about 2.5 million. That takes up a lot of what kind of increased your.
Yeah, I think the other thing too that is, good to know is that the ARPA money's in there as well. So
Exactly.
That's 2.5 million that we haven't identified how we're going to spend, but that's a significant chunk of the increase.
Correct.
Nonetheless, it's a good positive direction.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, anything else, commissioners? No? Okay, good work. I just have a question, like how long does an audit take for Wasco County, for instance? I see some people downstairs with their computers, but generally how long does it take?
It's year round. I mean, the amount of hours it takes probably for 400, 500 hours, probably around. I just off the top of my head, just thinking of the numbers of what it is. But it's not just in one chunk. I mean, it's 3 days here, right now I'm starting to look at your files and it'll come out in July and then we'll come out again in October. So it's kind of a year where we're always bugging Mike. So
They do come in quite a bit. We'll see them in July. They'll be here in person. And about the 2-week period leading up to that, we have to do some stuff to give them some preliminary numbers so that they can make the risk assessments. So we're working that 2 weeks. We're trying to get everything closed out to give them as good a numbers as we can at that point, which aren't fully complete, but it lets them set their controls and risk tolerances, and they do that. And then they'll come out typically, I believe it's like October, Kenny?
Yes.
And they'll come out, and it used to be that was scheduled for a whole week, that we'd have them, we'd put them in a cave somewhere and not let them out until they were done. But this last time, for instance, they did a lot of it premature or beforehand, virtually off-site. And Kenny was only here, he's scheduled in to be himself here for just 2 days, but he only needed to be here for one of them. So we're working to find the efficiencies we can to do that. Because quite honestly, when they come out here, they spend a lot of the time, the commute time to get out here from their location. So the more of it they can do without having to commute, they end up saving some time and our audit costs, because it cuts down on that. So those are things we're looking at. So there are some positives to the procedures we've had to adapt due to COVID. once again, I think we would have been done sooner. We would have been had it done before the end of the year if we hadn't had well, COVID and implementing a new system kind of took a lot of our time.
Wow, you've had quite a year too, Mr. Middleton, with all the different, COVID and state, federal funding coming in and having to track all of that and then implementing a new system. I mean, kudos to you, and with such a clean audit as well. So great job.
Thank you.
And Tyler, you popped in. Did you want to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of mirror what you just said. I want to commend the finance group for really getting our audit in tip-top shape and keeping it there. But also, I think it's important to recognize your entire leadership team because they are planning well, managing finances, and as you can see, our audit is moving in the right direction. We're not overspending. We're thoughtful about the taxpayers' dollars and those kinds of things, and that's commendable in today's world. So,
Absolutely. Thanks, Tyler.
Yep.
Okay. Anything else, commissioners, before we move on? Okay, shaking of the heads. Okay. All right. We're a little bit early, but I think Kate is here. Did I see her pop in for our transit grant application? Hi.
I am here. Yeah.
Hi. Hi. Yeah. So do you want to go ahead?
Sure.
All right. And yeah, I think the beauty of, and we're not always on time, but since these are recorded, people can certainly watch this later and if they aren't able to make it here on time. So go ahead, Kate. What do you got?
Great. Well, I think this is going to be a quick item so we can keep you ahead. So I am here today hoping to get a motion approved by this commission for application to an FTA grant that the Link Public Transit has traditionally applied for ourselves. It's called the 5310 Enhanced Mobility of Seniors and Individuals with Disabilities Discretionary Grant Program. And we have applied to this program directly in the past, received funding. It primarily covers a pretty substantial portion of the operating costs of the Link Public Transit. We use this program, which is competitive, to match stiff dollars that Wasco County receives and contracts to the Link. So an ODOT change in rules this year changed it so that transit agencies cannot directly apply, but it needs to be applied through the STF fund recipient, which is Wasco County. So in order for us to do this application, we actually need to partner with Wasco County to have you guys apply for it. And so we did present this to the Wasco County Public Transit Advisory Committee in mid-January, and they did carry a motion recommending that Wasco County apply for this source of funding with support from MCED. And so I'm here today looking for that support to move forward in coordination with Wasco County to apply for those funds.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Questions, comments, commissioners?
No questions. So Madam Chair, I'll move to apply for the 5310 Enhanced Mobility of Seniors Individuals with Disability Discretionary Grant Program in partnership with our great partner, MCED.
I'll second the motion.
Any further discussion? Okay. Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 And chair votes aye. Thank you, Kate, for the good work. And we'll see you next time. You are a frequent visitor here.
I know, frequent flyer these days. Well, thank you. And I'll be working with Tyler and other folks in the county to get that, that submitted. So thanks.
All right. Thank you. Okay. All right. And now I'm assuming Matthew is here. Hi, Matthew.